New tonight, Western Mass News has confirmed that the Holyoke Soldiers Home Board of Trustees approved a motion recently that named Mike Lazo as the home's new superintendent. The vote passed 4-2 at a meeting back on November 8th. Board of Trustees member Kevin Jourdain noted that he doesn't believe the governor has to sign off on the appointment. The state says Lazo's been the interim superintendent since December of 2020.